The air was thick with the scent of old paper and rain when the envelope arrived at the Whitmore estate. It was addressed in elegant cursive, sealed with a gold crest none of them recognized. Inside lay a single sheet of paper, folded twice, ink smudged from damp hands. It was a summons, one that would drag them all into the storm they had spent years pretending never happened. The lawyer's office was silent except for the steady ticking of a clock above the mahogany bookshelf. Richard Whitmore sat with his hands clasped, his wedding band tapping nervously against the wood. Beside him, his younger sister Evelyn twisted her pearls, their mother's last gift before she passed. Across from them, their half-brother Andrew leaned back, expression unreadable, the faintest trace of a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. The estate of Margaret Whitmore, valued at nearly $3 million, was finally being settled, nearly 5 years after her death. But this wasn't just about money. This was about legacy, loyalty, and the kind of secrets that rot a family from the inside on. The lawyer cleared his throat. Before we begin, there's an addendum. It was filed a week before Mrs. Whitmore's passing. None of you were aware of it. Evelyn's hand froze. Addendum? She whispered. Andrew's smirk deepened. Guess Mother had some final surprises. Richard's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He had always been the peacekeeper, the eldest, the protector. But that role had come at a cost. The lawyer unfolded the paper slowly as though bracing for impact. It reads, "In the event of my death, the ownership of the Whitmore estate and all financial assets shall not be divided equally among my children, as previously stated, but instead be left entirely to the individual who truthfully reveals what happened on the night of December 12th, 2001. The room went silent. For years that night had been erased, scrubbed from memory, locked behind unspoken fear. The night their father, Edward Whitmore, vanished without a trace. Richard's hand trembled. Evelyn's face went pale. Andrew only stared out the window, watching rain streak down the glass like falling time. Something inside the lawyer's voice cracked. Mrs. Whitmore's will was never about wealth. It was about confession. Before we go deeper into this chilling case, I'd love to know, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city or country in the comments. And as the details unfold, tell us, do you believe this was an act of greed, betrayal, or something darker? Also, if you're drawn to haunting mysteries like this one, please hit the like button and subscribe. It helps us keep these secrets exposed and bring you more stories that the world should never forget. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley. The Whitmore estate sat on the edge of Briar Creek, a quiet town in upstate New York known for its red maples and silence. Locals still whispered about the Whitmores, the picture-perfect family that fell apart overnight. Margaret Whitmore had been the town's darling, warm, graceful, generous. Her husband, Edward, owned a chain of construction firms across the state. To outsiders, they were untouchable. But those who worked at the mansion remembered the tension, the way arguments slipped through the walls late at night, the sound of shattering glass echoing down the hall. Richard, their firstborn, was the responsible one, an architect, steady and loyal, who stayed close to home. Evelyn had escaped early, moving to Boston after college, chasing a life untouched by family drama. And then there was Andrew, the product of Edward's brief affair, born 2 years after the others. Margaret had taken him in anyway, but the fracture never healed. After Edward's disappearance, Margaret retreated into isolation. No one ever saw her smile again. The police called it a missing person case. No body, no evidence, no foul play proven. But Evelyn remembered her mother's trembling hands the morning after. Richard remembered the smell of bleach in the kitchen. And Andrew claimed he didn't remember anything at all. For 2 decades, they carried that silence like an inherited disease. Now, with Margaret gone and her cryptic will on the table, silence was no longer an option. The lawyer continued reading. The condition is simple. The truth must be documented in full, sworn, recorded, and corroborated. Without it, the estate remains frozen indefinitely. Evelyn's voice broke the stillness. She can't do this to us. She's gone. She can't make us relive that night. But she had, and it had already begun. That evening, Richard returned to the old estate, the one he swore he'd never set foot in again. The key still worked. The door creaked to reveal dust-coated furniture, photographs of happier times, and the faint echo of laughter that no longer existed. He walked to the study where his father once sat every evening, sipping bourbon, scribbling notes on yellow pads. The air smelled of age and regret. Richard set his hand on the desk and felt something shift. A loose board. Beneath it, wrapped in plastic, was a cassette tape labeled December 12th, 2001. His breath caught. The label was written in Margaret's handwriting. He took it to his guardian and slid it into an old player he found in the garage. The tape hissed, then a voice, Margaret's, filled the silence. If you're hearing this, then I've failed to protect you from the truth. Edward is gone, and one of you knows why. Richard froze. The rain outside intensified, like the world was listening too. Margaret's voice trembled as she continued. I found his car that night near the river. The driver's seat was soaked in blood, but there was no body, no sign of struggle inside the house. Only one thing was missing, the contract for the Briar Creek property. She paused. I believe Edward was killed over that land, but not by a stranger, by someone who wanted it more than he did. Richard stopped the tape. His pulse hammered in his throat. The Briar Creek property. That was the development deal Edward had been fighting to close before he vanished. The same land Andrew later sold quietly to a private investor. Richard's thoughts spiraled. Could Andrew have? No, he was only 16 at the time. But Evelyn had been home that night, too. She'd come back from college unexpectedly. He played the rest of the tape. Margaret whispered, the police never asked the right questions. They wanted a confession. But so did I. If the truth ever comes to light, let it be because one of you found the courage I never did. Then silence. Richard sat there for what felt like hours. That night he called Evelyn. Her voice cracked when she heard the tape. She told him she remembered something she'd buried. I heard a crash that night, she said. And then, Dad yelling. I went downstairs, but the kitchen light was off. Only the porch light was on. When I opened the door, I saw someone dragging something heavy toward the car. Someone? Richard pressed. I thought it was you, she whispered. But it wasn't him. He had been out with friends, celebrating a new project contract. He still had the receipts from that night. That left only one person, Andrew. 2 days later, Richard returned to Briar Creek to confront him. Andrew lived in a modern house on the hill, a sleek contrast to the decaying mansion below. He answered the door in a tailored shirt, eyes cold, smile polite. Didn't expect to see you, Andrew said. You hear about the will? Richard nodded. I found something, a tape. Andrew's expression didn't change. So Mother kept secrets too. What a surprise. She said Dad was killed over the Briar Creek land. Andrew's smirk faded. You think I did something to him? I was 16. You're out of your mind. Richard stepped closer. You sold that land years later to a company that didn't even exist back then. How did you get the deed? Andrew's jaw tightened. For the first time, there was fear in his eyes. Be careful what you dig up, brother, he said quietly. Some secrets were meant to stay buried. But Richard couldn't stop. That night, he went through county records, searching for the transaction details. What he found didn't make sense. The buyer's signature on the deed matched Edward's handwriting, dated 3 days after his disappearance. Someone had forged it, someone inside the family. The next morning, the sheriff's office received a package with no return address. Inside was a single flash drive labeled For the Truth. It contained an audio file, Andrew's voice, recorded in secret. None of this was supposed to happen. He caught me. He said he'd ruin me, ruin all of us. I didn't mean to. The recording cut off abruptly. When police brought Andrew in for questioning, he denied everything, claimed the audio was fake, but forensic analysis proved otherwise. The voice was his. For 20 years, the Whitmores had lived in the shadow of a lie, and now, finally, it was being exposed. Detectives reopened the Whitmore case for the first time in 2 decades. Files long sealed in archive boxes were dusted off, their edges yellowed with time. The small Briar Creek precinct had changed since 2001, but the air in that room felt the same, heavy with secrets. Detective Harris, a veteran investigator nearing retirement, was assigned the lead. He'd been a rookie the year Edward Whitmore disappeared. He remembered the case vividly. No body, no weapon, and a grieving wife who wouldn't answer certain questions. The Whitmores, he muttered, always something off about that family. He started by comparing the new audio with the original statements. Andrew's voice was tense, low, and frightened in the recording. The phrase, he caught me, stuck out. Caught doing what? Forging a deed? Stealing? or something worse? When police subpoenaed Andrew's financial records, the puzzle started to take shape. 3 weeks after Edward's disappearance, a private account in the Cayman Islands received a wire transfer of $500,000. The sender's name was masked under a defunct LLC, but investigators traced it to a company connected to the Briar Creek development, a company Andrew helped establish when he turned 18. But there was something else, a name buried in those papers: Evelyn Whitmore. It turned out Evelyn had signed off as a consultant on the deal years later. When confronted, she claimed she'd done it under pressure. He said if I didn't sign, he'd tell everyone what really happened that night, she said during her second interview. I thought he meant the argument between Dad and Mom. I didn't know he meant more than that. Her hands shook as she spoke. I just wanted it all to go away. Detective Harris leaned back. So you knew your father was gone and your half-brother had access to the land deed your mother said was missing? Evelyn looked down. Yes. Why didn't you say anything? Because by then, I thought maybe Mom had done something. The detective's pen froze. Why would you think that? She was cleaning the kitchen that night when I came downstairs. The floor smelled like bleach. I asked if everything was okay and she said, go back to bed. Your father won't be home tonight. That sentence haunted her for years. As investigators pieced together the timeline, a different picture emerged. Edward had discovered Andrew's fake company and confronted him. In the argument that followed, something went wrong. Margaret found the aftermath, panicked, and helped cover it up, out of a mother's desperate need to protect what was left of her family. But the evidence wasn't complete. Without a body, they couldn't charge anyone with murder. Then came a break. Briar Creek was being redeveloped, new homes built along the riverbank where Edward's car was found years ago. Construction workers unearthed something near the old retaining wall, a rusted pocket watch engraved with the initials E, still ticking faintly when wound. And beneath the soil, fragments of bone. DNA tests confirmed what the Whitmores had feared all along. Edward Whitmore had been buried less than 200 feet from his own property line. The case that began as inheritance drama had become a homicide investigation. News spread fast through Briar Creek. Cameras parked outside the courthouse. Old neighbors whispered in grocery aisles. For the first time, the Whitmore name meant scandal instead of prestige. When Andrew was arrested, he said nothing, just a faint, bitter smile as flashbulbs exploded around him. During questioning, he refused to confess, but his silence said everything. Investigators found traces of his fingerprints on the original deed and a ledger noting the fake transfer of land ownership. It was enough for an indictment. Yet when the trial began, the defense argued something shocking. Andrew Whitmore did not kill his father, his lawyer declared. His mother did. And she told him to keep the secret or lose everything. The courtroom gasped. Reporters scribbled furiously. Evelyn covered her face with trembling hands. Prosecutors countered with the recording, the forged documents, and the hidden money trail. But the defense introduced Margaret's old letters, handwritten pages discovered in a safety deposit box after her death. In one, dated 2 months after Edward vanished, she wrote, I pray the truth never comes out. Andrew was just a boy. He didn't mean to hurt him. I cleaned up the mess. The river will keep our secret. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, Andrew was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and fraudulent concealment. His sentence, 14 years in prison. Evelyn, facing charges of obstruction, received a suspended sentence and mandatory therapy. Richard, the only one who had truly sought the truth, inherited what was left of the Whitmore estate, but it no longer felt like a victory. The mansion stood empty, the furniture covered in sheets, the walls whispering stories no one wanted to hear again. He spent his nights in the study, staring at the old photographs, his parents smiling, Evelyn's laughter, Andrew as a boy on the front porch. Every face was a lie now, frozen in the moment before everything was exposed. One evening he found himself replaying Margaret's tape again. The same trembling confession, the same silence afterward. But this time he noticed something different. A faint sound in the background, just before the tape cut off, a door creaking, a man's voice saying, it's done. It wasn't Andrew's voice. It wasn't his own. It was Edward's. He froze. Could it be? Had Margaret recorded this after the incident, or was Edward still alive when she spoke those words? The timestamp on the cassette was impossible to verify. The magnetic tape had degraded over time. But Richard couldn't shake the thought. What if his father hadn't died that night? What if the body in the ground wasn't his at all? He requested the DNA records again. The sheriff's office denied the second analysis, calling it unnecessary. The case was closed. Justice served. But something in Richard's gut told him the truth was still buried deeper. In the months that followed, rumors swirled. Some said a man matching Edward's description was seen at a truck stop in Pennsylvania years later. Others claimed he had fled under a new identity, abandoning the family that betrayed him. The official report never changed, but the whispers never stopped. By the next spring, the Whitmore estate went up for sale. Locals said lights still flickered in the study late at night, even though the house was empty. Richard left town quietly. No press, no interviews, just a single note pinned to the gate. It read, "Some secrets shouldn't be dug up. Others demand to be exposed. My family's truth was both." Years later, a documentary team revisited Briar Creek. They interviewed townspeople, combed through old records, and even unearthed a few missing pieces. But one mystery remained. The pocket watch found at the burial site was never conclusively tied to Edward. The serial number had been scratched off, and no other personal items matched his ownership records. Detective Harris, now retired, summarized it best in his final interview. "We solved the case on paper," he said, "but in my heart, I don't think we ever found the man. We just found what he left behind." Sometimes the darkest secrets are the ones we keep from the people we love. And in this case, the truth was exposed. But the damage was already done. Do you think justice was truly served? Or are there still secrets left buried? Share your theories in the comments below. And if you want us to continue exposing the world's darkest family secrets and betrayals, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story we bring to light.